What's going on YouTube? Mitch here, and today we're reviewing and going over a couple Chris Reeve Sebenza 31 Smalls. So pretty excited about this because these are my first two small Sebenzas. I do have a couple of the other Chris Reeve items to compare it with, but I did want to kind of go over this and show you and talk about my first experience with Magnacut in comparison to S45 VN, which has kind of been a staple with them for the last 2 or so years. And then obviously prior to that would be the S35 variety of this. But as always, just a quick refresher, I like to bike, I like to hike, I like to do all that stuff. And just starting out on the knife side of things, and for me this is kind of a beginner view and giving you my opinion on these things. It's more of a fireside chat, and like I'd be talking to a buddy or just someone casually in conversation. So I don't want to get too in depth. That's what websites are for, to look at details. So if I screw up, then you know what, it happens. But anyway, I've got two versions of this guy here. One would be the Insingo, and the other will be a standard drop point. Now, they don't balance too well, and I apologize about that, so I will probably try to do some B-roll to kind of show these a little bit better. But yeah, maybe I'll do that. That looks pretty sharp, huh? So, anyway, a couple things with these. So as you can see, I've got two different versions of the same knife in that the blade shape is just slightly different. So some say it almost kind of looks upside down on one, and that's kind of true, hey? You ever look at that? A drop point versus an Insingo. So you flip one and it's almost very similar to the other, which is cool. But basically when we're looking at these guys here, a couple things. The Insingo has a little bit more of a belly to it, and a little bit better for slicing kind of thing, whereas the drop point, you can kind of see it's flat, and then the belly, and then it shoots up. So it's compared to a Tanto. You know what, do I have a Tanto knife here? I can probably whip something up here in that variety to show the difference between a Tanto blade as well. If you give me 1 second, here we go. So there's your Tanto blade version. So drop point, I guess let's do it in this order, which makes a little more sense. And I'll zoom in to show that as well. So what do we got here? So we've got a standard drop point. This is on a lot of knives that you see. The Insingo, which is a nice slicey, everyday kind of blade. And then a Tanto, which has a nice little bend on the tip there, or a nice little angle, which is actually quite useful, and I'm kind of surprised. More info would be coming on this knife soon. I'm sure you can recognize that one, but also super cool, just so you guys know. But anyway, so on to the Sebenza Small. As you can see, I got both of these guys with the micarta inlays, which look real nice. It just, you know what, it's the kind of thing that if you're going to get a small particularly, I appreciate having these little inlays because I'm a bigger guy. My hands are, well, I'm 6'3", so I've got bigger hands. You know what they say about guys with big hands? They like bigger knives. And when you have these little inlays on here, it actually helps kind of make the knife feel a little thicker than it actually is. So I don't think any of the smalls that I have currently don't have the inlays on them for that purpose alone, which is just helpful. It adds a little bit of comfort around the belt clip here as well, which I really like. So that's cool. In terms of the knife itself, so it carries over a lot of features from the standard Sebenza 31. So you've got that real nice, you've got some really nice jimping here on the tops, which is always really nice. This is such a good feel to it compared to some of the other knives in my collection that have more space between them. I really like how it's just such a good kind of feel to it on your hand. In combination with those micarta inlays, it just looks and feels so nice. This is obviously, as you guys I would hope know at this point, if you're looking at Reeve's videos, it's obviously a frame lock. So on this one, we can kind of see here, and maybe I'll zoom in just to kind of give a little changed perspective on that. You know, everyone likes to see this stuff. So we can kind of see how much of the knife is being used here as well on the frame. So, you know, a good portion of it, I'd say you're, you know, 50% plus on both, which is good. I've never had a problem with it. And as you guys know, Chris Reeves are kind of the inventors of the, what did they call it originally? Like the Reeves lock or something, which is essentially a frame lock. But all it really does is you have this scale here, titanium on both of these guys, I should say, and it's just hunched over and bent over and activates the blade into a nice clip, which works really, really well. And super reliable. This guy's running on phosphor bronze. So phosphor bronze being on the inside of the pivot here, so that, you know, some knives have bearings, some knives have Teflon, and this guy's just phosphor bronze. So think of it as like really, really thin, you know, bronze penny kind of a spacer. It's just, you know, it wears in nicely, kind of develops a sheen over time, and the friction kind of slowly goes away. It's really smooth, and I really like it. So on that with these knives, you know, you activate and deactivate based on the standard lock. You push it in with your thumb. If that's the way you want to activate it, you can activate it as well with your pointer finger, which is a little bit harder. I'll try to do that, but you can do it, as you just saw. You know, on the Chris Reeve stuff, people often say, you know, they feel, what's the word they use? Hydraulic-y. They feel very hydraulic-like. And, you know, it's such a silly word because, like, to me, hydraulic is like, you know, metal on fluid or a rubber gasket pushing fluid. So I don't know if that's, to me, the best descriptive word. To me, it feels like, you know what, it has friction. Let's leave it like that. It's got some metal on metal friction, and which correlates to zero blade play at all. Like there's none side to side, none up and down. It's just, it feels tight. It's a Chris Reeve. This is why people buy this knife. It's just a super, super solid design, time tested, and you know, you can use these things out in sand. Not that I would suggest doing that. Please don't do that. But you can use it in wet environments, sand environments, mucky environments, and you know, you're not going to chew up bearings and change things out that way. So, you know, that's probably why they do it, and it's just simple. You know what? The actual phosphor bronze washer, it's not just like a circle, or it's not just like when you look around this pivot here. It's not just a circle that, you know, just sits around the pivot. It's actually shaped to the actual design of this. So as you're actually taking apart the knife, you'll take this scale off, and you'll see that each one has its own side, which is really awesome, and it just fits so nicely. And that's the whole point. Like, it takes up a lot of real estate on the blade. The contact surface area is big, especially for a small knife, and you know, you maintain that really awesome feel, like on the Sebenza 31. Now, I probably should have started with this, so I'll zoom out and kind of get to some sizes here. So, you know what? Actually, let me grab the measuring tape. One sec. Right, so in terms of sizing, they call this a small, but to me, it's actually kind of an in-between knife. It's a little bigger than I was expecting it to be. But if we look at both here, we're just shy of 7 inches total length, I'd say, right in that. Maybe a hair over, maybe a hair under, somewhere in that conversation. That's on the drop point, and if we compare it with the Insingo blade, you're right in the same ballpark, 7 inches. Blade length, you're coming in around 3. On paper, they might be saying it's 2.99, I believe. Yeah, blade cut length is 2.99, and that's probably more of a legality thing than anything, which is kind of funny. Now, if we compare this guy with the Inkosi small, you can see it's actually quite a bit bigger, and they don't really advertise this very much, and it was kind of surprising to me at first. When I first saw this, I was like, oh, kind of expecting the Inkosi, you know, to be the same size as the Sebenza, which they are in the large, and in this configuration it's actually a little bit smaller, which is kind of cool, because It's a little thicker, a little smaller, and as you can see on that one, yeah, you're like 2 and maybe 3/4 on the blade instead, and just a little shorter, you know, 6.5 overall. Just a rough estimate, but it's pretty cool in that regard on the Inkosi. And then I will say this, because you know there's going to be someone that asks, so how does it compare to the Inkosi Small in terms of width? So let's take a look at that. So as you know, the Inkosi is kind of a little bit beefed up version of the Sebenza in the first place. So, you know, blade stock wise, it is a little bit thicker on the larger versions. So hopefully you can kind of see here. The jimping is one thing I'll say, it should be different. Yeah, it looks different. So a little bit wider spacing on the jimping on the Inkosi versus the Sebenzas. Obviously the dual thumb stud, which is also cool. The blade as well is a little bit wider to kind of give you a little bit more of the durability. If you, I would hope you're not like wedging this and using it as a screwdriver and torquing the blade, but you know, there is that. I know there are some people that just like to watch the world burn, as they say. I'm not one of them, so I won't be doing that. But a little bit wider as well, I'd say, in the actual fit of the knife, which is, you know, pretty cool. But in terms of the sizing, as we were kind of getting into, I'm a little bit ADHD, and I apologize for that, guys. So this is the Sebenza Small. There is the Inkosi Small. Why don't we compare it with the Bug Out? That's a pretty standard kind of size. And why don't I move this down? So a little bit smaller, I'd say, than the Bug Out. Not by much. But if you like the way the Bug Out feels, the Sebenza Small is not going to feel too much smaller than the Bug Out. And in terms of the handle as well, it's going to feel a lot more solid, I would say. In terms of the bailout, there's that. So that would give you kind of a good comparison. And then why don't I bring in the Sebenza Large, which would be kind of this guy here. So quite a bit smaller than the Large, right? A lot of that is obviously made up in the blade. Proportion-wise, it's very, very similar, as you can see with the cutouts on the handle and the spacing. It still looks really sharp. It's just a solid knife all around, but a little bit bigger. And I will say as well, if we want to, you know what, why don't we ratchet this guy up one more step. And here's an Inkosi Large for comparison as well, if anybody wants to look at that and kind of compare. So we've got an Inkosi, Sebenza Smalls. Okay, that should kind of give you a good idea of kind of the sizing and how everything looks. So pretty cool. I don't know if we want to throw that other one in the top here, the Inkosi Small, just to kind of give you a good overall. And remember, anything that goes up the frame is going to look a little bit stretched out just because of the camera is at an angle. So we're really just looking at length here. But that should be a good indicator anyway on how this guy sizes out compared to some of its other friends in the business. Now, I will say this. When you are looking for your first Sebenza or looking to size this guy up, you know, it is cool to be able to go out and you know, get your hands on it and feel what it's all about and try all that stuff out. But it's another to kind of see what you really truly need in everyday carry. And the first thing I noticed going from a standard Sebenza 31, which is a Thunderbird edition, just if you guys were wondering why it has that little bird on it there. You know, the 31 is such a perfect everyday carry size, the Large. It's like an original. It's like their OG classic. You know, it's what everyone loves. But I will say this, you know, it fits the hand great, feels awesome, great big cutting edge. The Sebenza Small is just that much more portable. You've got good grip on the hand. I still have 4 fingers on it. I don't know if you guys can see that. I still have 4 fingers on it. I can still kind of choke up on the blade as needed. Fits really well in my hand. You know, it's a 3-inch blade, yes. Totally usable if you're going to throw it into, you know, a pair of dress pants instead of a pair of jeans. It just has a little bit thinner fit factor to it than the Inkosi. You know, it's got the, on this one anyway, the single thumb stud. And you know what? I was really expecting these to kind of collect some dust just based on the size. But you know what? I've been carrying them more and more just because it's so practical. And you know what? It would be even more practical if you got it without the scales on the side. And then that way it would just be thinner. And it would fit in your pocket that much better. Not by a crazy amount, but it would fit a little bit better. And I was truly really surprised at that because it fits your hands really well. You know, I would almost say it's like a medium-ish kind of size, a medium small or a large small, whatever way you want to look at that. Whereas like the large, that's a big knife. It doesn't matter what you compare that up against. It's still a big knife, the Sebenza Large. And you know what? It does have some presence to it, and you do notice it in your pocket. Whereas this guy, it's got the bug out factor going for it. It's thin, it's relatively light, but man, oh man, does this thing feel like, it feels tough. It feels so much high quality, or so much higher quality compared to like some of the Benchmade stuff. It's incredible what a difference it makes. So that's kind of my thought on the sizing of it. In terms of the overall build quality, like I was saying there, it's incredible. It's terrific. It's not anything that you shouldn't expect it to be. You'll put one of these in your hand, it'll fit really well. And the one thing I'll say here, the pocket clip, I swear, it goes like right between my 2 fingers. And that's really hard to show because I'm hugging the camera right now to do this video. But look where the clip is, and look how it goes right between my 2 fingers. It just fits perfectly. You don't even notice that. Isn't that wild? Just it's got such good ergonomics. I like it. Super accessible. And then now that they've added Magnacut, sorry, I just had a coffee and I'm having a burp here. But now that they've added Magnacut to the line, this thing's going to be incredible. This is going to be a knife that, you know, it's going to stay sharp. It's going to be tough. It's going to be durable. And it's going to be stainless. You know, I don't know the rest of the hardware. I'm assuming most of it's titanium, but it's going to last really well in a wet environment, which is terrific, because that's what people have been asking for. And this Magnacut steel is truly something that a lot of people, you know, it's going to change the knife game. People are just going to. It's just, you've always had to sacrifice something, you know, when it comes to edge retention or toughness or, you know, corrosion resistance. And Magnacut, it's really weird. It like checks all 3 boxes. You know, it's wild, man. It's absolutely wild. And mind you, it really depends on the heat treat. And I believe, I think Chris Reeves is doing Magnacut to like 63, 64 on their Sebenzas and Inkosis. I don't know what they're doing it on the Umnunzans, or I believe they're actually making it a little bit lighter of a heat treat on their fixed blades to like a 61, 62 to kind of add a little toughness and less edge retention. So, you know, Magnacut, don't think it's like this super amazing super metal, which obviously it is, but it really depends on how they heat treat it. And how they, and what they kind of bake it to, I guess, so to speak. So, super, super cool. Preference-wise, for me, if it's between the Insingo and the drop point blades, I'll be honest, I think I'm kind of preferring the Insingo. It's just so useful. Like, you look at how long the belly is on this versus how you've got a cut spot of just a little bit right here. I think I prefer the Insingo. You know what? I don't know what what the guys online are saying that they love and whatnot, but I just think that I'm liking the Insingo. Not saying that the drop point's bad. Both are great, but I think I've been preferring the Insingo right now. That may change. We'll see. Obviously, they come with this little little lanyard pigtail on there. You know, you can cut that off or take it off when you take it apart. The knives come with all the Allen keys, which I think these guys are Torx I don't know, 8s or 6s. Can't tell. To take this apart, and you know, it comes with instructions, for crying out loud, on how to take this apart. So you can do that anytime you want. If you want to take it apart, take that lanyard off, I would highly suggest not cutting it off, because for some reason you cut this little guy off and I swear it loses like $50 of the value of the knife. So don't do that. You know, things I would change about this personally, I wouldn't mind having a double stud. I know you can get them, I'm pretty sure, with a double stud on the blade, which would just be my preference, just because I have bigger fingers and I like to pull it out sometimes that way, versus they're a little bit harder to flick out such a small one, but it can be done. And remind you, these are brand new and aren't as flickable as some of the other ones right now. But yeah, they will break in. I'm absolutely stoked on this. Absolutely stoked. And I'm so pumped that I was able to find them in Magnacut. And you know, for anyone looking at this going, oh, I've got an S45V, you know, my knife is worthless. Guys, the difference between the two blades are so minimal that, you know, if you own a Chris Reeve, you can send this guy in to Chris Reeve right now, and for $100, they'll upgrade you to Magnacut and they'll change the blade out. It's really not a big deal. So if that's something you want to do, you know, I recommend it. Use it till it's toast, and then send it in. You know, you don't need to buy a whole new knife. You know, you've already worked everything in and it feels good and you know everything about it. So it's like, why change that? You know, like it's such a good relationship to have with a knife once you know what you have. So I'm stoked on it, man. Absolutely stoked. So anyway, that is my quick overview, and I hope I haven't rambled on for more than 20 minutes, but that is my quick overview of the Sebenza Small in both drop point and Insingo in the Magnacut blade, which is awesome for 2023 and beyond. So by the time you see this, I'm assuming they're available, because I already have them. Humble brag. And yeah, that's kind of it for me, guys. You know, thanks for stopping by, and if you have any questions, I read every single comment online. So if there's anything you want to mention, or if there's anything that you want to go over and review, you know, leave it below, because I'll read it and get back to you. Okay? As well, like, subscribe, share, all that stuff, and tell, you know, if anyone sees Tim Reeve, be like, hey, man, you gotta check out this Mitch guy. Best reviewer on YouTube. 3rd video in, best reviewer. I'm just kidding, guys. Settle down. All right, that's it. For anyone who's still watching, appreciate it. And have yourselves a good weekend, okay? Cheers. See ya.